Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, we've called our regular meeting of the Houston County Board to order. First item of business is the approval of the agenda, relatively short.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the previous minutes, that being the board meeting December 21st of 2021.
I did look at them till last night. Oh, I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the previous minutes from December the 21st. Further discussion?
Yes, I was wondering when we add something to the agenda, if we could be specific in the minutes what was added. It just said 2 items added last week. And then people did not know that we were.
That was added to the consent agenda, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I didn't write it out because they were then numbers in the consent agenda, but I can list them next time, just to
When we
be totally
approve the
clear.
minutes.
Okay,
It'd be nice.
It's clarification for anybody reading.
Exactly, because sometimes you don't, yeah.
okay, yep.
I did have a concern about that, but that's okay.
Do you want me to add that in on these or just start doing that?
Well, we could add that in
Would
now. I mean,
Yeah.
with that would be an easy fix.
Okay.
So you wanna, Greg, you wanna restate that motion to add the items to the consent agenda?
Yeah, I can do that.
Sorry, Bob.
Do you agree with the second? Teresa?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the previous minutes from December 21st with the notation of adding the 2 consent agenda items that were added after the agenda was posted.
Yes.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public comment. Don't see any online. I don't see anybody other than we have no appointments. So John is going to give us a report on the public health. You want that first? You want to go through the consent items?
I think John would be good.
Well, there is no consent items, is there?
Or I mean, before we go through the action.
Well, let's hear from John.
We can hear from John.
John, come on down.
I was thinking maybe we would wait till Tess is here.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Because it kind of has a bunch of
Input.
human resource.
So is she here today, or
It's
it'd be
Jesse.
nice to have her here for this first action item too, with it?
So we're going to hold on the first action item until we see if Tess is here. Doesn't show Tess, it just shows you. But action item number 2, consider approving the 2022 annual salary for commissioners. Apparently, the budget includes a 3% increase for the commissioners. The budget that we approved, correct? Yep. We approved the budget as presented, and I was under the impression that that did include a 3% increase for the commission.
On the list of items to reduce though. Just let me check.
That wasn't specifically for salaries, was it? That was for the department, for our budgeted department, right? Or am
I
I
understood
wrong
it to
on
be
that?
the department, yes.
You know, there's other things in the commissioner's budget other than salaries, but
Right, but we did increases for per diems and whatnot.
3% for just,
No, per diems went up more than 3%. That's what we're doing this year. Per diem is way above what we've got budgeted, so for 21.
I
So
thought per
we-
diems were set at 40 and 65, and they don't
I'm not
change.
talking about the dollar amounts. I'm talking about the amount in the total budget.
right,
We had $6,800 and the budget is, I don't remember if it moved it up to 10,000 or what it was. It moved the budget up for per diem. That wasn't a 3% increase. That was just a flat increase to try and keep up to what the per diems were ending up that we charged. We did not change the 45/65. Will change for the federal mileage part of it from 56 to 58 or whatever it is. The question is, are we changing the salaries of the commissioners by the 3%? From my perspective, I'd say we leave the salaries alone. But,
You take the 3% increase out.
okay, so the salaries, currently the budget on this, the budget has the salaries the same as 2021.
Or salaries.
Right,
For the salaries.
$19,016 and 40 some cents.
Greg probably can't hear Carol. Right?
Well, I got
So
one
it'd be nice-
question.
Carol, you want to come forward? Just, we're not going to put you on the spot, but you're the information guru here, so.
What's your question, Greg?
Well, we adopted that new pay grid, and I was wondering why we aren't in on that new pay grid.
We're elected officials, and we
Yeah,
set
we're
our.
elected officials, Greg, so we're not on the pay grid itself.
No,
Well, how about the rest of the elected officials that they're in it?
They're not on the
No.
pay grid either.
no.
That's some of the discussion this morning about
That was last week, we approved the elected officials
Mhm.
on a,
It uses the pay grid as a basis.
as a
Yeah.
basis, right, as,
There's-
yep, as a
Exactly.
backup, something to back up the information.
For those who are department accounts, that's how that got started.
Yep.
So what is the pay on that grid for a commissioner?
The commissioners are not on the grid.
No,
Our pay is $19,016 and some odd cents, and that's what it's been the last few years. If you take a 3% increase, that's about a $3,000 hit to the budget. So it's not a grand amount, but or a great amount, I shouldn't say grand. It's a question of whether or not we want to take an increase. From my perspective, I'm happy with the $19,016. It depends on what you guys want to do.
Well, I'd like a cost of living.
I mean, at one time, the board adjusted their salaries and then eliminated per diems, having to track meetings.
that had to be a long time ago.
And then the
Because
per diems
I've
were
never
added
seen-
back.
Okay,
That was before you were on, right, Tracy?
yes, yes. I've always seen per diem since I've been on, and that's 11 years ago.
So, and then I did check yesterday, Greg asked me to check with Fillmore County and they're at 25,800 for their salaries.
Do we know if they get per diems or?
Okay, that could make a difference. It could make a big difference.
And I looked up the average, taking the commissioner's salaries and adding the per diems, and the average that was paid this year was around $22,000. If I take all of the salaries and all of the per diems and then average it. it came out-
Divided by 5 or divided by 4?
Well, divided by 5 with kind of a, yeah, because you don't
I
have.
don't take per diem.
Mhm. So it would actually be higher if you had taken per diems, but
The average would be,
the average would be higher.
it would be higher.
The thing is that the per diem takes care of those folks who have extra meetings. I mean, like the budget people, we're working extra meetings. The negotiation people, they did a ton of hours and stuff and they needed per diem to cover their, that way there, I'm satisfied with what I'm getting now, and I think maybe if there is any adjustment, take care of those times that the extras, those who do the extra work get compensated for the extra work.
I agree with your sentiment on that.
Is that a motion?
Can't make a motion because they're not on the agenda, but it.
No, no,
Oh, it is.
it's
That would be part of that, wouldn't it?
For the year end, so.
Everybody should get a chance. Greg wants a cost of living. Teresa, what do you want?
I would like to keep our salary the same and keep our per diems the same.
Eric, what's your thoughts?
I'm fine with that. Keep it the same.
Will you?
I just basically, I don't know, but if any change in compensation for the extra meetings because in town or, but I like the idea where we're at now and per diem to cover those extra expenses of long travel and so on. I'll make that a motion. You understand how that is? And okay,
Yes.
motion made.
And a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to leave the commissioner salaries the same as they were for 2021 and leave the per diem rates the same as they were in 21 with the exception of federal mileage changes.
Yeah, that changes all the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think, I haven't found it actually on the GSA website, but there was an announcement that they're gonna be increasing it to 58.5.
Yep.
And once I get that, I'll create your per diem sheets. Monthly per diem sheets.
Okay.
And
Further
we will
discussion?
get those to you.
Yeah, that's the key.
Does anyone have one?
Yes, I have one for
I
you.
do. I do. Well, I haven't filled it out, but I have it here today.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Greg, you voted no?
Yes, I voted no.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1. Now we'll back up. Tess is here, so we're going to action item number 1 with regard to the 2022 annual salary of the auditor treasurer going to $89,960. Tess, come on up, please.
Yeah, and I
It's got
thought
your
that,
name on it.
yes, because I went to this committee meeting along with personnel, Eric and I, and the elected officials, and we had quite a lengthy discussion about the changes in the, with the auditor treasurer taking over 2 offices, and with the elections and the tremendous amount of time that needs to be put in. We discussed her salary based on the grid starting out, which would be, and I'm using my notes from our committee meeting, which was 42.25. And then the other elected officials really felt that this position should have that $1 an hour increase similar to what we did with the other non-union people. So at that time, we sat there and we discussed it thoroughly, and we came up with her salary being $43.25 times the hours, and it came to $89,960. And that's basically the consensus we had from our meeting. When it came to the board, I only had my committee meeting notes. I did notice it. And we use the grid as a guide for justifying what we were asking the rest of the board to consider for elected officials. It was just a guide, and we did not want to have it January 1st and July 1st differentials. We wanted, they're elected from January 1st for a year. We set their wages for a year. And that's how we came up with the price for the year for the auditor treasurer. Now, the other 2 were fine with what we had come up with them, but they felt this position warranted the total $89,960 for the year. So, and I missed that last meeting. because I only had my committee notes. So I am recommending that we change the auditor treasurer, and that is based on the position, not the person, basically. So this person would not run again. The new auditor treasurer would get the $89,960 for the annual, for the next year.
So
So
that's a change. What was the
It
one that we
actually-
agreed to?
it was, last
Previously?
week, we went with the 89,419, and then the change again in July 1st. And I would rather do it an annual amount for this position. So my motion is to make the annual salary for the auditor treasurer position for $89,960 based on our committee discussion.
I'll second that.
Got a motion made and seconded to change the 2022 annual salary of the auditor treasurer to $89,960 versus the previously approved $89,419. Further discussion?
I just want to clarify too that there was some miscommunication when, after that meeting we had with elected, but the auditor treasurer did not get, her salary was set last year. It was actually froze at 0. And so and negotiations were late. So then when we finally settled with the non-represented, they got $1. And so that's where we figured in the $1 for auditor treasurer and the step increased to 42, whatever you said it was, or
25.
25.
Was 42.25 was what the grid kind of said, and we added the dollar to it. And then so it's 43.25 times 2080, even though I think, as we all know, they put in a heck of a lot more hours of that. So,
And the other elected were fine with 2% COLA.
right,
One did get a step, correct? Sam didn't get a step.
yeah, I think Sam did.
Sam got a step.
Straight,
It's just a straight percent.
straight percent. I wasn't in that meeting,
I know you weren't.
but.
Well,
And
Doesn't
this, and
matter.
what you're doing
doesn't
is
make
well
any
within your guidelines, and it's perfectly okay. It is off step, it's not a full step, it's a partial step. But it's well within your discretion as a board and well within the guidelines that you've set.
so last week when we approved the non-represented for a 2% COLA, did they just get a 2% or did they go, the ones
Once
who
they-
qualified, did they get a step?
The ones who are qualified get a step.
Did you do the split step system?
Well, their steps are all over the place.
So you're going by anniversary dates?
Go by anniversary date. And so there was, if you went and gave the auditor treasurer the benefit of a full step on her anniversary date, it would be that second number that I provided you, which is a little more than the 89.
Yeah, I get, yeah.
But that's at anniversary time.
Well,
Which would be
Which is
January 1st.
First. And so that was.
Well,
all
this is
without
what we discussed at our meeting.
And well within the.
Yes.
And
parameters.
89,960 is what we came up with, which was agreeable with everyone at that meeting.
Yes.
So, but go ahead. Well, what I'd like to clarify, because we haven't got the information, this doesn't have nothing to do with this motion, but maybe we should settle that motion first, I guess.
Question I was gonna ask is, the 89,960 is the annual.
Annual,
There is no increase on some anniversary down the
no,
line.
Nope,
This is
that's a
just
set,
into the year.
that is a set salary right there.
Thank you.
right.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Was that an aye, Greg?
Yep.
Okay. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. You wanted to clarify.
Now, we haven't got the information on, because Teresa and I asked for it last week about how that looked on a spelled out in what people in the non-represented were getting paid. Is that forthcoming?
That can be that is forthcoming. I'm like I said, normally for your unions and your non-represented, we normally give, talk about the group and give that as cumulative amount, like 2% across the board or whatever, and everybody gets stuff on their anniversary day. With holidays and all the union activity going on, no, we haven't set out the individual grid, nor have we settled for the May peanut, which is the majority of your department heads. So we
I
really
was just
don't-
asking about the non-represented because we approved it last week for a 2% COLA and their next step, right?
At their
Yes.
next step, or there are those who were at the that were, their pay is grandfathered, if you will, that were at the cap of their
Right,
step.
Right. They're the ones that are capped are just going to get the COLA. Correct. I'm just trying to find out if there's that split deal, that artificial
No,
July
the-
1st.
That was a discussion that I had when I met with all of the department heads here. You can do it on your, if you're looking for a step, if you're looking to try to determine what the range of your possibilities are. You do a January 1, you can take the average, which is what maybe the average one of the department heads where they fall, that would be July 1. And then, of course, it has to be annualized. There aren't two different pay rates for the year for elected officials. There's one set salary. And like I said, you don't even have to have a guideline as a grid. Statutorily, you can just set that, but it needs to not be arbitrary nor capricious. So that's where you have that guideline for the department heads. Where we determined and this might help clarify things, Commissioner Myrie, why the other department heads are on the pay grid, if you will, that are elected officials. Because there was a banding analysis done if their position was a banded position as a regular employee, wherever they fall. And of course, there is no counterpart for the greater board of commissioners. So of course, those aren't banded, those are just within discretionary.
One union that's settled
Mhm.
does a July 1st, rather than anniversary date, it's doing a July 1st,
That was just for that.
just for the
Just
one
for-
union.
Yes.
We don't know what's gonna happen with the other unions yet, but for the non-union employees, it's all by anniversary date then.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Not the July 1st like you had mentioned.
I think we're just really looking for an updated list of,
Where's everybody at?
yeah.
So
So we
everybody,
have
so
all-
everybody, I mean, the non-represented plus we as a board knows
Yeah.
this is what
See,
we,
and that is,
we
that was
approve.
very helpful to have that.
yeah,
So, okay.
And of course, for payroll, we get that all together as quickly as we possibly can. We are all doing, have a lot on the plates during the holiday season and are working through our staff as fast as we can. And
That's
we'll get
fine. We
back to
just,
you.
yeah, when you can get to it, it's just easier to refer
Well, it
to
has
it.
to be sooner than later. We need to start getting
Yeah.
information. But we will get you that as a matter of information. We don't vote on individual
No,
employees.
no, we know
no,
that.
we know that.
Okay.
So,
It's the classification.
Thank you, Tess.
anything else?
Not till we get back around to We'll get rid of the last two action items, then we'll come back to the
Thank you, commissioners.
John, you and John. So next action item is consider the designation of county revenue, road and bridge, public health and human services, debt service and capital projects as the major funds of Houston County. Carol. Come on down.
So each year for our financial reporting purposes, we need to designate which funds we consider major funds and which ones we consider minor funds. And based on 2021 and the activity that we've had, these are the funds that we'll be using for reporting.
Seems to me this is kind of an obvious thing.
Like to have
Official.
So this is for auditors to reference to, that these are the ones, and these are priorities to pay.
for our audits.
Sounds like it's, I move to consider the designation as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to designate the county revenue, road and bridge, public health, human services, debt service and capital projects as the major funds of Houston County. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action item number 4. Consider approving the 2021 budget amendments to accurately reflect various revenues and expenditures and fund balance usage of the Recorder's Technology Fund and the Compliance Fund. I
I think we got a whole list of them.
Just a list. So at the, at the end of the year, we like to have our budgeted revenues, budgeted expenditures, departmental bottom lines as close as we can so that we don't have big variances, which would be red flags during an audit. Why did you only budget $50,000 in revenue when you collected 90? So these budget amendments bring line items into sync more. So it's easier when we're doing the audit. And as I pointed out at the Finance Committee meeting, going into 2021, after our first round of budget amendments for salaries, we were at a $190,000 deficit, budget deficit. Now, these changes bring our $105,000 to the good. So we're at now an $85,000 budget deficit. The 190 kind of came into play from the carryover CARES money that we had applied to salaries. So more of that will be left as reserve to help with salary adjustments for 2022. Once we
Okay.
get all those budgets. After the settlements.
One thing I'd ask Carol about, $54,000 steps on the east side are included in the 2021 budget information. I'm of the opinion that we will take $54,000 out of the ARPA money to pay for that, which will reduce the 85,000 by the $54,000
Right,
as far as the hit on the
right.
fund balance.
That's good.
That's just my opinion. I mean, everybody's got to agree to that. from that
Well-
perspective.
We all,
Yeah, we'd have to agree to the ARPA expenditures on that.
Right. From my perspective, that's a public health and safety issue, so.
Exactly.
It is.
It's long term.
well, at this time, I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendments to accurately reflect the various revenues and expenditures. Oh, no, is that the right one? No, that's the next one.
No, that's all.
Oh, no, that's right. Okay.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve the budget amendments to accurately reflect various revenues and expenditures, fund balance usage of the recorder's technology fund and the compliance fund. Further discussion.
Could I get an explanation on some of the fees, like for the dump sites? Why was that the reason for adjustment there? Is
Because we collected more.
we collected more than what we had budgeted? Okay. So we were very too conservative on that last year.
At the beginning of the year. You know, I think the COVID cleanouts of people's homes have made a big difference.
Everybody went to town and, yeah.
Right.
I know it did for me.
Yes.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. As far as discussion items are concerned, there's several that I want to bring up, but I think as long as John and Tess are here,
Yes.
let's have a discussion about the upcoming regulations that we may or may not have to be following. From Minnesota OSHA, based on the federal mandate, I assume.
So since we're sitting side by side on that stuff.
Okay.
So it is our understanding, let me preface this, that first of all, Sam and John and I are in regular communication and conversation regarding the new emergency testing standards and the MINOSHA, based on the OSHA standards, what all that means for us as an employer of over 100 persons. Looking at the Minnesota OSHA rulemaking site, they say that we now have to adopt plans as soon as January 3rd of 2022. However, on that site, this is straight from MINOSHA themselves, on that site, they say they will not start issuing any non-compliance for good faith efforts to adopt the plan and to start collecting the medical data as to who is vaccinated until January 10th. And so long as we will not be issued citations for the testing requirements until February 9th, 2022. And that is if they find that there's good faith compliant efforts made towards compliance. What employers need to do, and John, please hop in any time here, because this all comes down rather quickly to us. What employers need to do here is determine what kind of policy they wish to have. If they want to have a vaccine, mandate vaccine for all employees as a condition of employment, unless there's some kind of medical exception or exception based on a validated religious belief or something like that, that's one way. The other is a test vaccination, collect the medical records for vaccinated employees and require other employees to have to test weekly. And that we have to then would be collecting this information from the employee that is verified by the medical provider that gave the vaccination. That is kind of a tiered process as well. And it will require quite a bit of monitoring, because if you're partial way through your vaccination versus having been fully vaccinated, there are some different testing requirements. If you're on a stay home order, of course, the testing isn't required during the stay home time period, et cetera. There are, there's quite a bit of discussion, it's my understanding, amongst the county attorneys in the state as to whether or not this falls under medical examination requirements for which an employer would have to pay the, as a condition of employment, the medical examination costs. So far, we're hearing that we would not have to pay for the testing, that it doesn't fall within those parameters of the statute or a particular case law that may be on point. Sam will have to speak more to that. The general, I did send you something yesterday from information I received from the Minnesota Health Consortium as general guidelines as to what our health insurance will cover and will not cover. And of course, anything that is diagnostic or a diagnostic test for, let's say, someone's going in and they're ill and they have a COVID test, that's diagnostic. Currently, that's covered by our insurance. But as an employment requirement, that would not be covered. Certainly, the vaccines are covered by our health benefits that we have right now. And like I said, the diagnostic testing is covered, but the testing as a condition of employment is not covered. So,
But the testing's free already, right?
well, if it's 3,
I mean, not the testing, but the vaccination.
the vaccines are
Vaccinations.
free or covered through the
It
insurance.
depends, some places charge an administration fee, so the vaccine.
It's not free, it's
itself
free.
is, but some healthcare providers will charge a certain fee to administer the vaccine, the actual vaccines.
So basically, you're looking for whether we want to do a mandated vaccination policy, or do we want to do voluntary vaccinations with the testing mask requirement? Or non-vaccine, right?
Correct.
Those are our two options to consider.
Well, you
Is that
weren't
what
finished
we're
with
looking
what
for?
you were saying, so I've interrupted you.
I think I was finished,
Okay.
Commissioner. I would say that Commissioner Johnson had a question for me yesterday of whether that would even be, if an OSHA mandate is something that normally goes to the board. And no, it doesn't. It's something we normally implement. But because, it was a very good question, Commissioner. But because you have a choice in which policy, I think that has to come from the board because that is employer driven. And
So this mandate passed down by OSHA, we have no say on that. We just have to pick or choose the two choices, voluntary.
that's my understanding.
There's two choices that are outlined with this. Counties, I would guess you could do something in addition or subsequent to that, but I think to meet the requirement of OSHA, you need to either account for people who are in your employment being vaccinated or having some sort of testing. So what they suggested is either you say vaccination is a condition of employment, everybody has to do it, or you you'll collect your vaccine records, and those who choose not to be vaccinated will be tested on a weekly basis and masked up.
So we would have the authority to collect those vaccine records.
Oh, yes, we do.
So what, I just,
And we collect medical information currently under certain conditions on employees, and we have an obligation to keep that in a separate file for that employee, separate from their regular employment personnel file.
now the Supreme Court is starting to look at this too, or are looking at it.
They haven't determined whether they will take it up yet or not, and I don't know their deadline on setting their calendar as to which cases they're taking and which cases they're not. So we don't know if they will take it up or if they will refuse to hear it.
So we're just required to make it. So what you're considering a good faith effort would be to
Have a policy one way or the other. The rules, the OSHA rules are very specific. The policy that's been drafted by Um, two sample policies have been drafted by AMC. I believe they were drafted by DDA for AMC. Are fairly straightforward. I wouldn't add anything to them. I wouldn't take anything away from them. They're all based upon the OSHA rules themselves as to what we have to address. So that's really, we're just looking for direction as to which way you would like to go, and we will draft that policy and fill in the blanks and forward that to you for consideration.
Do we know of the staffing that we have, how many people are vaccinated and how many are not?
No, we
Have
do
we
not.
ever got that information?
No, we have never.
And are we're allowed to ask?
We could not ask, I shouldn't say could not. You have to have, that's private data, obviously, and then we had no business purpose in asking before. Now we have business purpose in asking for this information because it's to comply with an OSHA standard.
Either way, either option is going to require that they tell us if they've got the shot or not.
Right.
If it's 100%, everybody has to get it or you can't, or you got a choice, get it or do the testing and whatnot weekly.
Yeah.
With the two exceptions, medical or religious. Who's going to decide the medical, or who's going to, not medical, who's going to decide the religious?
That is really a question. I have to talk to Sam about that. I believe there are certain established faiths that don't, as part of their tenets of their faith, do not participate in medical. And I mean, that's pretty, and we could, it might be that we just see it, ask for them to have documentation from their pastor that they belong to that particular church. I don't know.
I think-
I'd have to
I think
ask
what
Sam.
Bob's asking, who gets to decide whether that's acceptable or not? Is it the human resources, or is it the board, or Sam?
I think that, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you choose a path that you're going to require all employees as a condition of employment to be vaccinated, that's where your religious or medical exemptions would come more into play. If you choose to take a path where you collect vaccine status, but give employees a choice, and if they choose not to, whether it's a religious thing or.
Correct.
Then it's mute.
Then it's a moot point. And I
Right.
think that's one of the benefits to looking at the latter option, because you don't have to wait into all of that.
And
to
so
answer
that's
your question on the first one, I would think that would almost be a legal question that HR and Sam and the county attorney, if you choose the former, which is mandated vaccine with potential religious exemption, that's something that would have to look at what exactly the criteria in case law for those exemptions are. So that would have to be something HR would have to do, or personnel would have to do in consultation with the county attorney's office.
So the two choices is mandatory vaccination sample, or vaccination or testing and face covering sample. That's the two choices.
So is every
That's
county
what we're
gonna be
doing.
doing the same thing, or if we don't all do it through the whole state, what good is it? I mean, Houston County locks her down, Fillmore's wide open, Elder Key's wide open, Winona's wide open, La Crosse County's wide open. We're not gonna get a handle on this unless everybody's gotta be on the same program. Every company's got a different program. One company, you can test positive, then you get a negative test and you go back to work in 2 days. Another company, you get vaccinated all 3 times and your husband shows up positive, you can go back to work if you're negative if you've been vaccinated 3 times. Now, how does that stop it? Nobody's been able to
Commissioner, I
answer that
believe-
question.
Commissioner, this is a nationwide mandate. And the state of Minnesota and Minnesota OSHA rulemaking has determined to follow the statewide, the national OSHA, or federal OSHA, I should say. The states are allowed to modify OSHA standards by adding more safety, but they're not allowed to modify OSHA standards by taking away from the standard. So I think this is an effort to correct the problem that you identified, Commissioner.
Seems to me it makes sense for us to go with the, if you're not vaccinated, you test weekly rather than mandating it for everybody. It would be too hard for us to determine all the reasons why you can say I can't be vaccinated, and who are we to decide? This way, if you're not vaccinated, you need to test weekly. It seems to me makes more sense for a county our size to go that way.
I agree with that, but the problem lies with the testing and
Yeah.
the access to testing. So
I think that that's a valid point. Tess put some information out last night, I think, and, testing and having available testing to just anybody, like, as we come through the holiday season, one of the strategies is you're gonna have a family gathering. It helps if you're vaccinated, but also maybe makes some sense to get tested. Getting those tests is not as easy as some think. If you're symptomatic, it's not hard. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a cold and I thought, okay, I need to get tested. But I had to get an order to do that, and I was able to get that test, drive up to Spring Grove. But I don't know if that type of capacity is available through my healthcare provider if you have large numbers of non-symptomatic people getting tested for compliance.
would at-home test kits, the ones you buy at the drugstore, would they be?
I don't think so, based on our reading of it, is you need to, there are some test results that if you, like an antigen test, isn't, it can show that you had this or that you have this, but it doesn't tell you whether you're currently active. So if you have a positive test like that, they encourage you to get a regular clinic.
I know that. I'm just saying for the testing program for voluntary, that wouldn't be
I don't
sufficient.
think so, because you need to have something that's verified by a medical professional. Now, the spit test,
I have that information. Acceptable proof, that's vaccination. The test is the same way. I think it has to come from a medical provider. It has to be validated. Also, the employee has to sign a statement that the information they're providing
Exactly.
is accurate, or can they expose themselves to criminal penalty. So there's quite a bit of teeth in here for the employer as well as the employee. But it sounds like they're saying good faith compliance. So if we don't have enough, is going to be what they're looking at, good faith compliance by everybody. So if we don't have enough tests and people can't get tested, and you're trying, I would argue vehemently that that's good faith compliance. We're doing everything we can within the parameters of what's available to us.
We're doing what we can do.
I
So,
will say there are quite a few more tests out there as far as the availability than what I was initially. I know there's a back and forth. I know even some clinics are issuing as much as for a single small site clinics, 200 tests a day or more, I've heard. And so they're doing that right now ongoing, and they have a pipeline. So
Do we have
that's
any-
hopeful.
do we have any communications with Mayo or Gunderson as far as testing sites, Caledonia, Spring Grove, that our people can go and get tested weekly?
so I doctored with Gunderson, and I was able to get that test in Springboro, presumably get it in Houston too, but again, I was symptomatic. I had symptoms, I called in, and I needed to get an order. Now, that was 2 weeks ago. That was just as this stay was being reversed.
When you say get an order, you mean a prescription or?
Yeah, I had to get an order from the provider. So I called them up and I said, can I just come through the drive-through and cross, or can I go somewhere? And they said, no, you'll need to have an order from your physician.
You need a reason for
Right.
getting it and
Because there's
versus,
a capacity thing there too.
Mhm.
And
But now we're dealing with
That's bad.
that.
everybody.
I suspect.
And with
our-
this was
Not
started from,
everybody,
well,
but
good
we're
share.
dealing with a lot more asymptomatic people that would need testing.
Mhm.
I suspect we're going to hear from our regional healthcare providers very shortly. You know, we have to give them a couple of days to pull it together. This is, but I believe I expect to hear from them in short order,
I
that
think
there'll be announcements.
what we were hoping for today is just kind of some direction, because I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. And to ask you guys to act on a policy without answers or a good idea of what those questions are, what it's gonna take to operationalize this, some of the logistics. That doesn't seem fair to ask that, but getting a sense of, okay, what direction do you want us to go, we can put some more meat on the bone.
So assuming 150 plus employees, let's say 30 of them don't have the vaccination, just using a number.
Mhm.
Can human services, I mean, you've got licensed nurses and whatnot, can you set up a vaccination schedule that those 30 people that do not have the vaccination can come weekly to human services to get tested, to document that they don't have COVID?
a testing,
A testing,
not a vaccination.
or, yeah, you tested, not vaccinated, but
I don't know how we would stand something up like that with current staffing. And also, there's the associated concern with the availability of testing stuff.
it's gonna be true wherever you go. You go to Mayo Clinic, you go to Gunderson, do they have the test? So the people that want to get tested but can't get tested, do we say, well, you're canceled for the week, or you're off for the week?
I think that goes to Tessa's point of you're making a good faith effort,
Right.
but
We're just trying to do.
This is so ridiculous.
And then it goes to what Greg was saying, this is for people with 100 employees. You come to Houston County, how many businesses have 100 employees versus all the other businesses that don't have? You know, what's, so 10% of the working staff in Houston County has to go through this, the rest of them don't? Makes no sense.
Crazy.
I mean,
If it's helpful, I mean, this is anecdotal. Yesterday, I know one provider, my daughter works at a clinic. She was able to give 100 tests in approximately 3 hours. These are 24-hour tests. She was able to do that many in that amount of time, and the clinic will then they send them out for processing. They will be processed, and within 24 hours, the individual will have their results. There are clinics and these professional health organizations know how to gear up for these things. That's, I guess, my only point here. And it may have been 3.5 hours, you know, that's just.
Yeah.
But these professional clinics know how to gear up for this sort of thing. And I expect that we will hear from our outreach from, say, the occupational health providers that we have in the region. They know it's,
And we're actually making a good faith effort to,
so what we need from you, as John said, is we need direction as to whether or not you want us to be bringing back both policies to you for further discussion, or should we just be looking at a vaccine and testing policy and bring it back for right away to the board for your consideration and movement forward?
that would be my feeling to go. It would be just so hard to do a mandatory vaccination and try to enforce it. at all.
Well, enforcement would be they would have to quit.
Yeah, and
No, we terminate them. They wouldn't.
They would be terminated, yeah.
Well, there's a
know.
process.
Well, I know
Please
that,
keep in
but-
mind, we have our labor agreements. We will go through a process. There are a lot of steps prior to a termination.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that is a potential result.
It's similar to what like Gunderson was doing. You've got until such and such a date to get it done. You got another week to get, if you aren't done, you got another week. And if you aren't done by the end of that week, you're done working here.
I would say that it is safe to say that we would have to issue, according to what I understand and have read so far last night, that for those that are not in compliance, we would have to issue, and bless you, a stay home order.
What?
Stay home stay home order. So that process towards potential results in losing one's job may go quite quickly. I don't know. I don't want to start 30 grievances with the unions that we have, that we are not looking at our labor contracts as well.
Well, that's just another layer that we gotta look at is the unions. What are they, what is their
Well,
thoughts on
they
that?
follow OSHA standards, and we have never had a union that I'm familiar with refuse. They have been good partners in making sure that I don't know how they'll be now, but they've always been good partners in making sure that, because they have an interest in making sure the workplace is safe for all. So they've always kind of been there. with us hand in hand.
What's frustrating for this is that none of us can do anything about it, but this was brought on by the top administration to do this mandate. They should have had they should have had their work laid out before to get the testing supplies up so they could do their testing. Instead, they're just, no, we're going to do the mandate and then we'll worry about the testing later. That doesn't make any sense. But then again, we're talking federal here, but.
Well, my concern is, for safety of our employees, we worked hard to get staffing enough to keep
Yeah.
things going. Without violating HIPAA, can we find out the numbers we have as to getting?
Well, we'll make a good faith effort to collect the data. We already have employees that have kind of been trying to line up and give us their vaccination records. I applaud those employees, trying to help us get through this process quickly. I so far told them, let us get a policy in place first and we'll collect it. Once we've collected that data, of course, we cannot and will not share individual data, but I can provide you, or John can provide you if he gets it at the state level, composite data, non-identifiable.
Percentage.
Well, I don't know. I think we should table it till we get more information, because you got, now this morning, they're talking only 5 days quarantine. They don't know what they want to do. They said this morning, if you're vaccinated, you only got to quarantine for 5 days. They change the rules every day. They told me
And that-
10 days.
Now that just changed yesterday.
Yep.
The 5 days thing was changed yesterday.
CDC does revise their guidance, and I think they revise that guidance based on what they're seeing. I share your frustration, Commissioner, because, we have a variety of different partners that approach things differently, and the guidance has changed over time. Big picture, I would prefer that the guidance changes to be more responsive to what we're experiencing now. You don't want to have the guidance that we had 2 years ago, because there are a variety of variables that have changed since then. But it is very frustrating when, you kind of have this headset and it changes overnight. All of those things aren't necessarily connected to this. And the other thing I urge is, this is obviously a very emotionally charged topic, one that I would prefer not to wade into. But, discussion of people being dismissed, I think, that's the main crux of what Tess and I are asking for is, which direction do you want to go on this? If you go go with the collect vaccine data and give people the option to test and mask while they're in the workplace, I think you avoid the vast majority of those kinds of questions. That I would also agree with Commissioner Meyer, we don't have enough information to bring something to you and a recommendation as to which direction you should go. But this, I think, is picking one of those paths, then we can put more meat on the bone and think through some of the challenges we'll have in implementation.
Right. And it is a good faith effort to go with the, be vaccinated or test weekly. And at least we're showing a direction without mandating it or you're fired
The other thing
or terminated.
I agree with you, Commissioner Johnson, that it's incredibly frustrating, even before this, the encouragement to get tested, that's an important component in the fight against this pandemic. But actually getting those tests has always been a unique challenge in rural areas.
Oh, yeah.
It's also, as it relates to this, Tess has brought up, if you're asking employees to do that, does that mean that you incur expense? And I think we need to look at that and look at the legalities of that with our county attorney to decide, what part of your policy is going to address that. Is that an expense you're going to incur? Paid time, all sorts of things. There's a variety of different logistics we need to think through to put into a policy that then you can debate and discuss and adjust and revise as you see fit.
We cannot take action on this per se today anyway, but I think by consensus, we'll ask each commissioner by consent, if they agree to the consensus that we go with the vaccination or testing mask policy, and not the complete vaccination mandate.
That's my feeling.
I agree with that we should look at the ease of keeping our people employed, keep the services available for our people, and masking and weekly testing seems to be the way to go. The cost part, I think, was, well, how are we gonna verify this? My last comment is, some of these here take-home kits, as we all know, if we don't read the directions correctly and don't follow them to the letter, we might get a negative test and yet be positive or asymptomatic. We don't know. I'm not an expert in any of that stuff, but we should rely on good, valid testing also is what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, it sounds like that isn't going to be able to use that anyway. But my first reaction is I don't want to do either. But
I agree with you there.
Yeah,
We have a new consensus.
we agree with that.
and it's really, and I'm not anti anything. I just don't feel that someone should lose their job for it.
Greg, what's your thought as far as the consensus opinion?
Well, I think you probably already know that, but I agree not to have it. I don't think we can mandate something that there's no regulations. They don't know a damn thing. Last Thursday, they tested 600 people because they were going home for Christmas. None of them were sick. They were going home for Christmas, so they got tested. What a waste of money.
Greg,
Until they get a better handle on this.
Yeah.
there's millions of people that think they're just like you, that are upset and frustrated. We all get that.
Yeah.
But I guess our job here is, of the two, the testing program would be the least intrusive. You can't even say that.
I agree with what you're saying, that if you're vaccinated, great. If you're not, then you have to be tested and masked. I would like to know if you guys can find out financially what that means as far as do we have to bear the brunt? If we do, can we use ARPA funds for that as far as part of the rescue plan? And what happens after this? And maybe it's a moot point. Maybe the Supreme Court does step in. Because from my perspective, it makes no sense to do that for employers with 100 employees or more, but not do anybody else. I mean, So the rest of them can carry the COVID around and the big employers can't. But,
Well, I had a friend of mine, or he's in the construction business, he says 105 employees. He says, I'll have to make a decision which 5 or 6 are gonna have to go, or do I
Exactly.
rotate, or, you know,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but I think we're all looking to do what we need to do to be in compliance with the least effect on our employees and our public too. There are certain parts of our work staff that the closest they get to somebody is probably 100 feet.
Yep.
You know, but, you know, because they're in a truck or other vehicle or whatever. Then there's others that are
face
next
to
to
face.
each other working, so
Well,
it's a big variety.
and if they're working outside, they don't have to mask.
If they're outside, or if they're in a vehicle by themselves.
They
if they're
don't
in a
have to.
Vehicle with someone else, no. So you could have, say, even a member of one of our departments that doesn't normally work outside, they're in there, and they're in a county vehicle, they don't have to mask.
Unless you're
Unless they have
vaccinated,
Somebody else with them.
unless you're vaccinated, then you don't have to wear a mask.
No. If you're fully.
So if one is not
fully-
vaccinated and the other one's
fully-
vaccinated, one has to wear a mask, the other one don't.
Fully vaccinated. Well, we'll have to-
See, this is how insane this whole
Yeah.
thing is. And we're not taking it on you guys, trust me. It's just-
There'll be a lot
This
more.
is just insanity from the federal level.
Top down.
Yep.
There are multiple ways of looking at this. Fully vaccinated, if everybody were fully vaccinated, which I'm sure that is what the purpose of this kind of rulemaking is. If everyone were fully vaccinated, no, we wouldn't have to, we'd just be.
Well, and there's a certain number of people that can't be vaccinated. So
Absolutely.
We're just making a good faith effort here.
I think that's a
We,
good start.
they're not gonna take us
typical good faith, yeah, just
10 years in prison. if
the
the
looks
board
of it
can't
versus.
enforce it, Right?
We may
It's a
get more
good
snowplow
faith
drivers.
effort. Okay.
All right. That's
You
our
have
consensus.
your
We got a
direction.
Believe
consensus.
me, this
Good luck.
is, a lot of work on our office that we aren't looking forward to asking for more work either, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Couple other discussion items I wanted to bring up. One was the comp use plan, putting together the application for an RFP. Do we have any kind of, I mean, the original one we sent out was so detailed.
Mhm.
Have we got any options or any plan to put together a more simplified plan that we can? put
That is
something
the
up?
plan. So Amelia asked Martin to work on it. She's gonna assist, but he's gonna
Put it together.
take the lead with me.
Okay.
And I did tell him that, yes, what we'd like to do is simplify it. The goal is to get proposals because we
Mhm.
want proposals to compare and look at so that we can hire the work out.
Right.
So we have several examples that Amelia found. I have a couple that I found. And then we have the original.
Okay.
And ours, yeah, we need to, the plan is to simplify it. And I did tell him that. I'm not sure where he's at with it. He just started and, you know, we've got end of the year stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But the hope is to get it to you guys for approval, you know, early on in 2022.
Like the middle of January,
Okay,
let's
And
say
then-
your second meeting in
You
January,
think so? That quick?
sometime in January.
Okay.
Let's put,
let's
it-
shoot for the end of January. And then,
Let's shoot for January.
yeah,
okay.
that's good.
And then we want to make
23.
sure that it's posted for a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
Because last time I was told it was only posted for like a week, which wasn't really enough time for anyone to
Right.
come up with a proposal.
Okay.
That's fair.
Good.
And the other thing, well, we had our finance committee meeting this morning, Greg and I with the finance people, but we already talked about that with Carol, so I really don't have to bring anything up on that. Was there anything you wanted to add with regard to the finance committee, Greg?
No, everything looked pretty good.
Okay.
I'm good.
The last thing I wanted to bring up was the Bank of the West presentation. They had an error, you know, if we're gonna do something with banks, we gotta decide what we're gonna do. Because it'll be a while to do the transition. Bank of the West made an error in their calculation, so they want to come back and talk to the finance committee at least with regard to what happened. And so I think Monday, they're gonna have a presentation for the finance committee. And then we'll report to you on Tuesday for, you know, what that means. Carol and Donna are also gonna check with regard to the merchants bank presentation and whether or not some of the things that they recommended doing, the auditors, just to make sure that the auditors are okay with
Right,
some of the processes as far as, what's that called, Carol?
sweeping,
Sweeping, that's what it is, yeah.
The state auditors you're talking?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we will have a presentation, so I don't know if we can do anything about it now, but we will have a presentation on Monday from Bank of the West that we can report to you on Tuesday, and maybe we'll have some answers as far as what is acceptable within the presentation made by, so we can have some more information for our decision making. Because if we do switch, it's gonna take some time to get that out. That's all I wanted to report on. I did miss the department head meeting yesterday because I had, like everybody else, we had family down, and then I didn't see the message about the department head meeting till after it was over.
Yeah.
So there was no point in going. That's all I got. Anybody else?
Carol will need a new list for department head meetings for 22, when you have
We'll
time.
probably just keep it the same, but I'll change the dates.
Okay,
Okay, sounds good.
And then give me a paper copy
Yeah, I have.
that I can hang on my wall. Excuse me. Anybody else got anything to bring up?
So it is a holiday Friday, so we're gonna send the packet out for next week's meeting Monday, but I'm gonna work on it first thing on Monday. So the deadline can be the end of the day Thursday.
Okay.
But Monday,
It'll
right
be-
away in the morning, we'll try to get it to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
And we're closed Tuesday, correct? I mean, not Tuesday,
Friday.
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 Yes.
the
Which is
building.
why it will be coming Friday,
Anybody else got anything to bring?
sometimes.
Go ahead.
No, I had nothing to report. It pretty quiet week.
I sent out emails to Greg Davids and Jeremy Miller. And I got a response from Greg Davids that he'd be willing to, he's available Tuesday on the 11th to come here and talk to us.
That'd be
All right,
great.
great.
I haven't heard from Jeremy yet. I just sent this out this morning
Okay.
early, so, because I read that they were going to be at Fillmore County, so I extended an invitation for them to come here as well, so.
Thank you.
Very good.
So we'll see what Jeremy, what works for him.
Okay.
So then we could listen to what is on the legislative agenda for them and give our 2 cents worth what should be on there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We just got something that came down from ACA
Mhm.
that showed their list of things too, so what they're pushing or promoting at the big buildings.
And the governor has his list.
Mhm.
Everybody's got a list. Teresa, what do you got?
Nope, I don't have anything.
Greg, do you have anything?
No, we pretty much talked about it, so. We had an airport meeting, but I think we talked about that already, didn't we?
Yep. Wait and see what happens on that.
Yep.
Any public comment? Anybody? I find it interesting that I see Mary sitting there. I see Mary on the screen.
I know.
Mhm.
You're on there twice. You got something you want to tell us?
That's a bonus today.
You know, I didn't realize Audrey was on too. We could have got her input on this, but anyway, we had that discussion.
Right. So, I have nothing else. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? One note of interest as far as this next meeting, that's the first meeting of the year. So committee appointments and whatnot
Mhm.
take place on that meeting too. So,
Full day.
well, I hope not, but it'll
Yeah.
be longer than normal.
We should have an update list for the appointments too.
The
Yeah.
new one.
Yeah,
It
I,
probably hasn't changed much since.
no, we have 2 working copies, so we gotta compare them and make sure we've got the right one to bring forward to you. But if you
Okay.
notice something that's an error on it, we'll correct it going forward for the next year.
Mhm.
Because there's a few of us that have been updating it, so
You know, we
we're
did,
getting there.
we did want to add that for the MCIT alternate and delegate should be on there because we had to make a last minute decision last year.
Yeah, I'll
Things will
talk with
change.
Donna.
Things could change as far as
Yeah,
who's on what
you
committee.
can always switch or you can always
That will change.
alternates or something, but at least we have an initial.
So you guys give us some paper copies since they're hard for us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's.
It'll be in the packet, but yeah, I'll give you a paper copy if I will write that on my list.
Just
So
like
let me
us,
know
you'll
if
have
it's
to
not there when you
remember
get
where you
here.
put it.
Yeah. There you go.
So we're gonna vote on.
Yeah. All those, motion was made to adjourn and seconded for the discussion was over. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed say, thank you, Greg. Those opposed, it's that 3-second time delay. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.